This episode of the MultimediaJay Show is brought to you commercial-free by Cheap Chap's Mouthful of Sugar Candy. This holiday season, give all your loved ones with sweet tooths what they've really wanted all along. Cheap Chap's Mouthful of Sugar Candy is the most honest candy in existence. It doesn't try to be anything other than what it actually is, a mouthful of sugar. So this holiday season, give your loved ones what they've wanted all along, a big, huge mouthful of sugar. Cheap Chap's Mouthful of Sugar Candy. Let's start the show.
Howdy folks, Jason here, aka MultimediaJay.
What is up, everybody?
This is the MultimediaJay Show for December 21st, 2012. Today's show topic is It Runs on Steam. And now, the man himself, MultimediaJay.
Runs on Steam! And every Back to the Future fan in my teeny tiny audience just got that. Those of you that haven't seen the Back to the Future trilogy, go watch it and you'll get what I'm talking about with the title of this podcast. You know, yeah, there's actually a pretty good Back to the Future trilogy out on Blu-ray, which properly remasters the stuff in the trilogy without changing the content, unlike a certain someone we know of by the name of George Lucas. Well, if I had this technology back in the 70s, Greedo would have shot first. Okay, let's not get into that. There's been enough commentary and picking stuff apart on that. Welcome to the MultimediaJay Show, everybody. My first podcast in, how long has it been? Like months or so? Well, there's been a couple of reasons for me not doing any podcasts. First, obviously, work's been running me into the ground. My situation's depressing, as you've seen with Radio Style and some of the segments I've done on there lately. I've had all kinds of stuff going on. I've done a series of Ashens parodies with cheap dollar store and cheap stuff store products and things like that I recently wrapped up for the time being, now that I've run out of cheap stuff to make fun of for now. And overall, it's just, yeah, it's really been busy. Plus, I didn't really have any topics that would work well with this podcast. This podcast is supposed to be for those big topics that have big, long discussions and things like that wouldn't really work well with a radio style segment. And I haven't had too many big topics other than the economy, which I still got to do a giant podcast about, especially now that the December report for November's jobs activity is out and the numbers are out. So I'm probably going to try and pull off at least one more podcast before the end of the year to talk about those kinds of things. But for today, I don't want to depress you all with news that the economy is still spinning its tires. Let's talk about something that would resonate very well with a lot of the gamers in the audience, myself included, who's been keeping an eye on the development of console gaming, the launch of the Wii U, and some of the other things that are going to shake up the console industry in the next year or two. We talked about the Ouya earlier this year, and today we're finally going to get around to talking about the Steam Box. Yes, it was recently confirmed that Valve is working on some kind of Steam console. So for today's show, I want to talk about Steam, the Steam console, the Steam software, what Steam means to gaming, my history with Steam, what I've thought of Steam over the years, and things like that, and just what I think that Valve is going to be able to do to the rather beleaguered gaming industry at this point through innovative ideas like the Steam service that really nailed digital distribution quite well compared to other previous iterations of digital distribution services. So today, here's what we're going to be talking about. For our news commentary, I have an article from Times Techland blog talking about why a Steam console would be a big thing in gaming. We'll talk about the points it's brought up in the article, respond to it, give commentary on it, etc., and talk specifically about the Steam box there. And then for our main discussion, Steam in general, including the Steam box, of course, but also talking about the PC client, the business model, what it means to me and you and all the other gamers out there and people who play on PCs, maybe even people who play on consoles too. If this Steam box enters the living room and takes its place alongside our Xboxes and PlayStations and whatever the next Wii is or something like that, the Wii U, and yeah, I'm wondering if Yeah, I'm kind of, I did a blog entry, multimediajay.wordpress.com, responding to a video that Ashens put up about the Wii U. So that's why I'm still kind of stuck on the whole Wii U thing, because he actually demonstrated going through the menus and things like that on the Wii U, and I am appalled at how clunky that system is to operate. Does it really take that long to go from a game back to the main menu? Longer than the original Wii, I might add, but yeah, that's another discussion for another day. But that's pretty much what we've got today. It runs on Steam! Yeah, it really goes well as a great title, and things along those lines. One last thing worth noting, I've heard that some folks are taking these podcasts and downloading them as MP3s through a YouTube to MP3 conversion site. Now, I've heard of these sites before, can't really recommend any because I'm not too familiar with any of them, don't know which ones have better reputations, quality, results, or others, but if folks want to download these podcasts via those converter sites, by all means, I mean, the only reason I'm not putting this stuff on an actual podcast site is because I don't like the business models of most podcast sites. I think YouTube is a far superior choice to just about any podcast site out there right now, both in terms of not operating as like a storage vendor where you have X amount of space free, and then after that you got to pay extra per month. And also in terms of the clickable stuff, like what I've been doing with the program guides on here. So there'll be a click. That's really the thing. If you go to MP3, you'll lose the program guide. So you can't click around. If there's any segments you want to listen to first, you can't really click around or anything to skip right over to them. So, but yeah, well, do whatever you want to do. But yeah, the YouTube version of this will have the program guide, and I'm also going to be putting these in adding companion blog entries for all the links, related articles, and related videos too, as part of my further efforts to better integrate the video blog, the vlog, or the YouTube channel, I should say. I don't just do video blogs on there. The YouTube channel and the WordPress blog more and more closely together, since I've done so much on WordPress this year. Actually, far more on WordPress than on YouTube, but that's something that I've been saying all along, so let's not just keep saying it over and over and over again. Let's get into some news commentary. Jared Newman over on Time Techland's blog at techland.time.com. Link will be in the companion blog entry that goes along with this podcast over on my blog at multimediajay.wordpress.com. The headline reads, "Why a Steambox game console would be a big deal." And I couldn't agree more. A Steambox game console is a big deal. I think, honestly, if Valve can pull this off, the Steam Box is probably going to be the biggest shakeup to console gaming that we've seen in years, more so than the Ouya. Now, we talked earlier about how the Ouya was a great idea. It opens up console gaming in terms of the console being more affordable. It's open source, things like that, and it allows for more opportunities for indie developers to get their games into the general public without having to go through all these heavily established channels like the various marketplaces on PS3, Xbox, and now the Wii U and things like that. Yeah, the Ouya was a great thing. The Steam Box would be even greater. Matter of fact, given Steam's PC roots with the Steam client on PC, I think the Steam Box should actually double as a computer. So far, from what I'm reading, it looks like this is going to be a Linux box that runs Steam and some of the other stuff as well. But there's some issues with Linux. There are some issues with Linux in that games aren't as compatible and things like that. There aren't a lot of titles that work on the Linux version of Steam as of yet. I really think if the option's available, I wouldn't mind if Valve sold this box and gave me the option to pay extra to get a Windows version and then have it double as a Windows PC in the living room. We've seen in the past couple of years the whole talk about post-PC and all that other stuff that we talked about in the very first podcast that I ever did on here. And one of the things that I mentioned was computers are gonna morph all over the place. There'll be computers everywhere, but what form they take on is gonna be all kinds of things besides your typical desktop and laptop. And with the state of console gaming as it is, where, especially with my recent experience with my PS3 that I got last summer, console gaming is basically PC gaming, but worse. You know? Yeah, seriously, that's what it is these days. What are consoles? They have hard drives, they have internet connections, they have processors and memory and video systems. It is. It's console gaming, but worse. Especially what I've seen with the PS3 with all these updates I have to run on absolutely everything. The system, the games, the hot new AAA title that I just picked up that I now have to wait 20 minutes while this mandatory system update downloads before I can play the game for the first time, blah, 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 etc. Yeah. That's what console gaming is these days. It is, and why not just take the extra step and release a console that basically is a living room PC? Put a Blu-ray drive in it, let it double as a home theater PC. I mean, gaming already is basically an everything box market these days. So why not? Although being Steam, I'm not going to expect them to put in an optical drive because it's digital distribution, but maybe at least leave a USB port so we can have like a plug-in drive or something and allow for people to play Blu-rays on the Steam box. Yeah, how you game these days. Man, how anybody can game these days. There's just so many options available. And even more so than that, what people can use as their computer, there's more options available. But yes, I love the idea of a Steam box, and I really hope I hope Valve can draw on their roots in PCs, PC gaming, etc., and things like that to really, really make this console shine. I mean, why should the Ouya have all the fun shaking up the console gaming world? Definitely. To paraphrase another movie, go Steambox, go Steambox, go! This time one of the Ninja Turtles movies. I'll give that one to you folks for free. There we go. Yeah, I've plugged the Back to the Future trilogy, and now I'm plugging the Ninja Turtles movies. What's next? Let's not find the answer to that question anytime soon. Okay, we've done all this talking about the Steam box. What about the article itself? Well, it makes some very good points, but let's go down through the various points. Why would a Steam game console be important? Several reasons. And we're just going to go down the list that they have here and respond to them all. First, death to the disc. And I don't really agree with this one very much. I think that disc-based gaming has its place. Like, one of the things that really scared people away from digital distribution, and probably continues to still do that nowadays until people find out, what Steam is like and stuff like that. Probably one of the things that has scared people away from digital distribution is the whole idea of, I don't have a physical copy. What happens if the company goes broke? Will it be crippled with DRM? In some cases, even with Steam games, third-party DRM like Securom and whatnot still installs as part of the Steam install, even though Steam serves as a form of DRM itself. But DRM is kind of one of those cuss words among techies because it's basically one of those colossal failures in the tech world that hasn't done its job. It sounds like a good idea, but it just hasn't panned out. I mean, if anyone remembers Armake21, he's actually still around. He came back to YouTube. He now calls himself Marco, and I think his channel's called Wasto Time or something. But yeah, he still does videos. It's just not the AVGN style stuff that he was doing before. But if anyone remembers Armake21's rant on DRM and the specific example he gave where the DRM on some game that he bought twice wouldn't, twice. So we have enough problems with $60 games these days. Never mind, having to spend $120 to find out you wasted 60 of them on a game you can't return because you can only return unopened copies of games that sell in stores. Oh, these stupid things. Yes, but if anyone remembers his rant, DRM is one of those cuss words in the tech world because it's one of those things that sounds like a good idea on paper but has not panned out well at all whatsoever. You have situations where if you have more than one optical drive, and every computer that I've ever owned or built has had at least 2 optical drives, it thinks you're trying to copy the game and keeps you from running it, things like that. The DRM can do that stupid stuff. I deliberately, despite being a big fan of Command & Conquer Red Alert, Command & Conquer Red Alert 2, Yuri's Revenge, etc., I deliberately skipped Red Alert 3 because of the DRM that came with the program. Now, if the folks behind the Red Alert series have lightened up on some of that crap, maybe I might actually check it out. But with some of the stuff I've read about DRM and Securom and Starforce and some of the rant videos that I've seen and all kinds of other assorted borderline malware DRM that's out there these days, yeah, I think I'll pass. If I can avoid DRM, I'd rather do that because I know it's one of the biggest failures the tech world has seen, especially with even an RMake's video way, way back in the day. Well, a couple of years ago. I don't think that counts as way back in the day, but I've already gotten made fun of for that once when I talked about 2007 as back in the day in a video I did a few years ago. But as we've seen, when your system has 2 drives, it won't run, and then you can download some kind of crack file that breaks open the game in 30 seconds. It's sad, you know? It just shows how much that this stuff just doesn't work. And then you got situations where cracked versions of games run smoother and better than actual retail versions that are slogged down with DRM and all that other nonsense that makes intellectual property such a huge discussion these days, especially when even the people who want to do the right thing sometimes get punished for doing the right thing. I know actually, and if you want to talk DRM and things like that, and we're really going off on a tangent here, so I better get back to the article, but let me just say this one thing about DRM. The most crippling experience that I've had with DRM is from a program that came out back in the mid-2000s, RPG Maker XP. Now, earlier on, I remember there was a controversy when I was in college. I used to look around the internet looking for free games because I was a poor college kid on a shoestring budget. We didn't have things like Steam back then, so I couldn't constantly get games for 50 to 75% off like Steam has with their never-ending sales. So I was playing games like Dink Smallwood and there was a parody of Legend of Zelda, a Spanish theme parody. It's called El Legendo de Smelda, Ocarina of Time, or something like that. I should do a video on that one of these days. It was a spoof game that kind of made fun of Ocarina of Time. But basically, when I was in college and I finally got done doing all my homework and stuff, and anyone who's been to college knows, yeah, homework galore if you go to a good school. Oftentimes, before I started getting enough money to start playing retail games again through an on-campus job and stuff, I'd poke around the internet looking for all the goofy free games that were on download.com. Now, some of these games were made in programs like RPG Maker 95 and RPG Maker 2000, which were, how shall we put it nicely here, unlicensed translated ports of Japanese programs from overseas that some Russian guy got a hold of, I guess, and translated into English and stuff like that. But apparently it practically became like an internet subculture of its own, and there were all these goofball games released for these programs. And then finally, in the mid-2000s, the company that made the original Japanese program made an official English translation of RPG Maker XP for Windows XP, of course, back then. I think Vista was just coming out or something like that, but they had this goofball trailer on download.com and later YouTube and things like that. And there was this cheesy announcer, it was like, RPG Maker XP. And I was like, okay, good. I can finally start making my own RPGs and stuff like that. Let's check out this program. So I got it. And it was crippled with DRM. It was protected by Protexis. Every single time I reimaged my machines or had hardware crashes or something like that, I'd have to send an email off to somebody at Protexis to allow me back into my own program that I spent $60 on. So obviously that became too cumbersome, and nowadays I don't even bother with the program anymore, nor have I purchased the program that came after it. I think it was RPG Maker VX. I haven't bothered with that either. And here's the worst part. There are actually crack programs that could break into that program in under 15 seconds. Here I was doing things legitimately, and you could break into that program in under 15 seconds with a crack, even though I'd gotten it the right way by buying it and actually trying to use it in a properly licensed form. So that's the worst example of DRM that I've seen. So where do we get off on this tangent from? 11 minutes in, almost 12 minutes now into just this segment. I was hoping this wouldn't be a big long show, but anywho. So, DRM, scary subject, something that scares people away from digital distribution. So, I don't totally agree with death to the disc, because I like disc-based games, and particularly, I prefer the simplicity of it. Plus, in this day and age with the telecommunications industry in the United States and Canada being completely dysfunctional and not wanting to ever let their customers just have what they want, always trying to sell endless bundle deals and crap like that, there are bandwidth caps all over the place. When AT&T jumped on the cap wagon a few years back, I think it was a couple of years back, whenever it happened, when AT&T jumped on the cap wagon here in the United States, the majority of internet broadband connections became bandwidth capped. So after AT&T went to the dark side, the majority of connections are now bandwidth capped, so downloading gigs and gigs of games got shot in the foot for most of us. Not like it was very viable in the first place if you had like old slow DSL or something like that, and you could literally spend all night downloading one game. So, yeah, even DSL, I call it dinosaur subscriber line these days because it's so outmoded compared to even cable connections blow it out of the water these days. And of course, fiber, the king of wired broadband, which sadly all these companies keep blowing off, except for Google. Go Google Go with Google Fiber. Anywho, I like disc-based games because they can make things simpler. They can assist with reinstalls. They can assist with they can speed things up. They can simplify things. They can save you a lot of downloading. I think discs should stay around, but I think it should be more a matter of like what Bethesda did with Elder Scrolls Skyrim. You can install the base game with your disc and then download the patches instead of downloading the whole darn thing and having it take all night. Because as we all found out the hard way when we bought Skyrim in the stores, Skyrim was basically the Steam version sold in disc form. Surprise! We'll save that for the general Steam discussion coming up in the next part of the show. But yeah, death to the disc. I can't say I completely agree with death to the disc. There is still a place for disc-based games these days. But yeah, Steam is largely digital distribution. So Cloud9 for PC gamers. Let's take a look at that next point. I think the main point that the author of this article makes here with Cloud9 for PC gamers is that this will bridge console and PC gaming together by giving you basically a living room box, and the cloud backups for your save games and things like that can allow you to play your games. You can play on your PC for a bit, then go out into the living room and put it on your TV and stuff like that. Although I do think that Steam should take that next step and just make the Steam box into a living room PC, something that can be used as a PC, that you could install Windows on and put Microsoft Office or something on it and use it as a computer. Because, I mean, why? Why not? So, but the merger between PC and console gaming has been long overdue. Consoles these days are basically like PC gaming, but worse. Why not just take that extra step and make a gaming console that actually is some kind of PC? A games first mentality. Now this, I think, is a searing indictment of what console gaming has devolved to. Game consoles these days are far from gaming devices. They're basically living room everything boxes that do a little of everything. And sometimes I think that these companies that are doing this have kind of overemphasized the whole everything box thing and kind of gotten away from what it's all about in the first place, the games. Even Nintendo, practically the last holdout for the games, for the it's all about games mentality with what they did with the Wii, nowadays is doing stuff with the Wii U too. They're kind of going beyond what they used to do. And basically what they're doing here with the Wii U is they're adding more features in, and even they're kind of getting away from that. So, Microsoft leads the pack, but it's just, where did we go wrong that console gaming these days basically has to be PC gaming but worse? Simple. We started making these everything boxes instead of gaming machines. And although I did just get done saying that the Steam box should double as a PC, if it is just a game box that runs Steam and plays games, it'd be good to finally have another box again besides the Ouya that talked. Well, actually, no, even I think the Ouya is going to do the everything box thing to some extent with whatever's allowed on it besides games and software and things like that. But I really think that we are long overdue to see a game box that's actually a game box again. And not just a slightly worse computer with longer system updates and load times and game updates and all kinds of other assorted nonsense. friendly to indies. This is something that the Steam box will share with the Ouya, being open source and things like that. And it's good, too, because gaming these days has gotten way too consolidated. I mean, what doesn't EA own these days? Oh, wait, Ubisoft? I think, but all these gaming mega giant companies that are kind of getting a little too drunk on the big company monopolist Kool-Aid need to be shaken up and realize that, yeah, you really do need to do your job in order to do well. And people aren't going to be happy if you're just like, oh, well, you know, we own practically half the market, so we can just release stuff and people are going to buy it. Like various EA shenanigans and things like that. What about Madden and what it's devolved to these days? Oh, yeah, a few new game features and a roster update for the cost of a new game every single year. That kind of stuff. And then you got Final Fantasy, where I read that one of the reasons why there hasn't been an HD remake of Final Fantasy VII is because it would be a big ego killer if Square Enix couldn't make anything better than Final Fantasy VII and finally just had to sheepishly make an HD remake of the game. One of the things that, oh yeah, well, we want to come out with a new Final Fantasy that's as good as 7 and in HD instead of having to update the old game. And it would really be a real blow to our pride if we had to admit that Final Fantasy VII was the best we could do. I don't think Final Fantasy VII was the best they did anyways. My favorite FF was Final Fantasy VI, and that wasn't even 3D. So, yeah, industry consolidation, I've seen it all over the place. Gaming is just one industry. You know, we've also seen it with telecommunications. We've seen it with cell phone providers, and things like that. We've seen it with all these industries that drive people completely up the wall. And I don't think that's a coincidence. It's your classic market structure discussion again about monopolists versus more competitive markets and all that other fun stuff you learn if you ever formally study economics. But this indie friendliness definitely needs to happen. Because EA can't rule the world forever now. So, yeah, there have been so many people, and I've seen so many folks who play video games that are frustrated by the status of gaming being so hyper-consolidated that some more competition can only help gaming move forward. The last point made in the article is about hardware innovation, because Valve has experimented with things like wearable headsets with accelerometers and stuff, so you can literally have it's like if you ever watch the AVGN's Virtual Boy thing where he duct tapes the thing to his head, that except not in red and black and crap and stuff like that. They've been, let's just say that Steam is very unorthodox, or Valve, I should say, is very unorthodox in how they do things, and I think this ingenuity could help them on the hardware front as much as it has helped them on the software front with Steam. So it'd be really interesting to see if they could innovate and make an innovative console of sorts. Like what I said earlier, make it into something that can double as a PC and without a lot of the issues with PC gaming, and they'll definitely have a real hot seller on their hands. Okay, so all things considered, yeah, this is still something that's very early on in terms of it coming into existence, but I'm definitely looking forward to the idea of a Steam box, an official Steam console of sorts, because Steam itself has been quite the service over the past few years. It practically brought this, along with Steam, along with other digital distribution setups that have succeeded, has practically brought PC gaming back from the brink, as we'll talk about in the next part of the show coming up, where we talk about Steam in general and where I think this Steam box fits into everything. So, see you on the flip side, folks. Stay tuned. This is the MultimediaJay Show. And I apologize for the tangent earlier about DRM. Anywho. Intermission!
This is the intermission part of the show. If you want to go grab a snack or a drink, pause the podcast and do so now, because the MultimediaJay Show is coming right back in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, time's up.
Back to the show.
This is the MultimediaJay Show. And now, the man himself, MultimediaJay.
Steam. One word. One syllable. yet a single word/syllable that has had such a great effect on PC gaming over the past several years. I don't think anybody can deny it. Steam has really done quite a bit for this hobby. And I don't think it's just PC gaming either. I think the benefits that Steam has brought to the PC side of things are eventually going to find their way over to the consoles, and all of gaming as we know it will be better off because of Steam. Of course, nowadays I have a very rosy opinion of Steam, but it hasn't always been the case. Of course, when I first thought of the idea of digital distribution for video games, I just was totally turned off to the idea. Several years ago, PC gaming was drowning in DRM. There was all kinds of shenanigans that were being pulled, from pseudo-malware type programs like Starforce to Securom being a pokey pain in the neck. Actually, my disc version of Elder Scrolls Oblivion, you actually need the CD in the drive, you ready for this? To uninstall the game because of Securom. You can't just delete the game. You gotta go hunting for the CD, and it's gotta be the exact CD, or else Securom doesn't let you uninstall the game. Yeah, stupid stuff like that. I think in the companion blog entry, I'm going to put RMake21's old video. I think it's still on like the RMake archive or something, about how DRM and stuff really punches PC gamers in the face. Especially when, as we mentioned in the last segment, there have been times when pirated versions of games have run better than legit versions. And basically anybody who wanted to go by the book and play by the rules, aka folks like me who don't copy software and stuff like that, we've been punched in the face. While the people who just don't care have actually had better, smoother running versions of games because they weren't straddled with all that DRM. So, with all of that stuff that was going on a couple of years ago, and myself having deliberately skipped some games like Red Alert 3 because of DRM issues, I was not at all interested in digital distribution. Between the DRM shenanigans and the big box gaming company shenanigans, like some of the stuff that EA has done in recent years and things like that, the idea of digital distribution to me just screamed yet another attempt by these huge gaming companies to strangle the heck out of people's software through DRM and crippleware, and not allow people to even make proper use of software they buy in the name of stopping piracy. So, actually, Steam kind of ambushed me in terms of my introduction to it. I never bothered with Steam because of the bad reputation that DRM and digital distribution had in my mind at the point. Steam kind of got shoved on me last year, actually, when, to my nasty surprise, my store-bought disc copy of Elder Scrolls Skyrim turned out to be little more than the Steam version on an install disc. When I first installed the game, as were many other people who'd never used Steam before, I was not happy that Bethesda was basically only making a Steam version of the game, and those of us who went to all the trouble to buy a disc version, we basically got the Steam version on a cute little backup CD if we didn't want to download the whole thing all over again. This is before all the patches, too, so I'm guessing my disc copy is rather useless at this point with all the updates that have taken place since the launch of Skyrim. But yeah, there were actually people going on the forums, and Bethesda's admins were threatening to ban them because don't talk about reverse engineering our software, because they were looking for ways to run Skyrim without it getting bogged down by Steam. Fortunately, through efficiency patches and other things like digging around through Steam and turning off that silly in-game overlay display that pops your achievements up and stuff like that you really don't need to see when you're in game and stuff like that, the performance hit and of course the expanded memory patch for systems with large amounts of RAM, Skyrim through Steam is now the best running Elder Scrolls game that I have, as well as one of the best looking. It's amazing. It's great that, some of these people in these companies out there actually still have, a pulse and understand that we're human beings who want to enjoy the games that we buy, not just customers that are points on your balance sheet or something like that in terms of dollar amounts spent. But it's good that Bethesda actually didn't allow the Elder Scrolls game to get the Elder Scrolls series to get dragged through the mud by DRM and Steam issues. But that was my introduction to Steam when I had to start using it in order to play Skyrim. I wasn't happy about it when I first got it, but once I found out about some of the ways that Steam operates and the endless Steam sales and things like that, I've kind of warmed up to the idea of digital distribution of games. Recently, of course, I repurchased Morrowind and Oblivion via Steam, and I'm working on setting up like a super nice install of Morrowind and Oblivion using the Tez Nexus mod manager for the Nexus sites for Elder Scrolls Morrowind and Oblivion to try and get like a Skyrim-like experience with the mods being managed and downloaded and stuff like that and installed via a program instead of the old-fashioned way we had to do, where we had to poke through folders and use programs like Tessimi to clean the mods in case there were dirty game settings in there and things like that. I just remember the bad old days of modding the heck out of my Morrowind install so much you almost couldn't tell that there was actually still a game under all of those mods. But yeah, I'd say, and I bought a few other games too, and I've got a few other games through Steam, like I think Dirt 3, I haven't played it in forever because it wasn't all that great, there were bugs all over the place, but I've got Dirt 3, which I got as a freebie with a video card that I purchased, came with a coupon code for Dirt 3. Oh, I think it was the last Radeon card I bought. There was a promo going on where you entered a code on Steam and got Dirt 3 for free. I also have downloaded and messed around with Lord of the Rings Online because of the player music system in that game, though I've barely played Lord of the Rings Online compared to other MMOs. Actually, I'm thinking of removing the game from my Steam install because I just haven't played it in so long, but I don't know if I want to re-download it again if I ever get curious. And I also got EverQuest 2 when it went free to play just to poke around, see what changed, and deleted it shortly afterwards because I didn't find it all that interesting. Oh yeah, EverQuest. Oh, how the mighty have fallen in terms of dominant MMOs. Something else, though, that Steam's going to experiment with, the next thing, or Valve, I should say, with Steam, is selling software through Steam. And I think that's probably that's a great idea, because one of the big things that I like about Steam is Steam, of course, run by Valve, a rather unorthodox company in terms of how they run their business, and it shows in things like Steam and whatnot. Steam finally breaks from this very restrictive, long-running tradition of software DRM as we know it. And Steam, one of the things I like about Steam the most is that Valve, through how they implement Steam, gets it in terms of how people own computers nowadays. You know, sorry to all those companies out there putting restrictive EULAs on their software that say only install to a single computer. The 1990s were a long time ago. Lots of people, including people who aren't nerds and geeks like me, have multiple computers these days. I mean, what am I up to? I've got a main system, a Frankenstein system consisting of entirely parts from old systems that I didn't feel like throwing out. I'm actually overdue for a motherboard and processor upgrade, but I need a decent job to ever be able to afford something like that again. So I'll stick with my Phenom 6-core 1090Ti from 2010 for the time being, even though it's struggling with World of Warcraft Mists of Pandaria and stuff like that. Oh, well, it runs Skyrim fine, so. But, yeah. So that's two desktops, plus the crap top, which is a compact chunk of plastic piece of junk that I picked up in 2010. Most of what I use laptops for is TVs, basically. I'll sit down in the living room with a lap desk and watch something on Hulu over my wireless via a laptop or something like that. So the crap top serves its purpose largely as like a geek equivalent of like a small 13-inch TV or something like that. And, of course, there's the netbook, or crap book, as I call it, because it's an Acer piece of junk that was also a dirt cheap machine back in March of this year. It's only got a 1 gigahertz AMD APU in it, so it's got blue processing power and blue graphics. I got that machine largely for the 5.5-hour battery life for really portable stuff. Like, I've got Audacity on it, and it's got USB ports, so I can plug my Blue Yeti into it. One of these days, I want to take that out into, like, the woods or something and record nature sounds with the Blue Yeti microphone in stereo mode or something like that. Or basically, yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to do with that netbook, is use it as a mobile recording station for audio. It's also extremely portable, and during the blackout during Superstorm Sandy around here, actually I was able to hop online by running my DSL modem and my netbook off of a car jump starter battery. So I was actually online posting on Facebook while the lights were out for days on end. That was fun, but that's another discussion for another day. So That's 4 computers, not counting the bits and pieces I've got sitting around that I just haven't gotten around to throwing out. I don't have enough to make another system with, but I'm pretty close. I think I'm only like a motherboard away. So, yeah. But I'm not the only one. My dad has multiple computers now, and he's not even a computer. He's not a techie at all. He's got one of the Frankenstein machines consisting mostly of parts from my 2005 homebrew PC as his backup, and he's got some piece of junk E-machine from 2007 that he signs on to AOL with. Yeah, laugh it up, folks. AOL dial-up, good old school 1990s AOL. He signs on to AOL with that to email folks in the family every so often. He doesn't do too much computer stuff besides email, so that's why he's content with that woefully outdated AOL dial-up. So here we are, someone who's never ever been a techie ever in his life and probably never will be and has no interest in ever being a techie in any way, shape, or form, who has 2 computers, and me 4. And I've known people who are on like welfare and food stamps who have multiple junk computers that they access the internet with. No, actually, some poor folks I know who barely have any money to pay their bills to begin with want to get their kids cheap laptops for Christmas so they can use their wireless broadband at home to sign on to Facebook and things like that. So they have barely any money to pay bills with, but they have broadband, a wireless router, and want to get their kids laptops for Christmas. I mean, have computers gone totally mainstream these days? I mean, it used to be when I was growing up, the computers were like rich people toys where your family had a bit of money if it had a computer in the living room. And nowadays, forget it. People go buy a laptop like they're going to the corner store for bread and milk or something like that. But yeah, so we've gone off on a tangent yet again. I can't stop yammering about stuff when I go off on tangents, unfortunately. I've really got to work on that. But here's just some examples of people having multiple computers these days without even needing to be techies. But what do software companies do? Oh no, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Only install the software on one single computer. And then folks wonder why I use so much open source software. It's because I don't feel like okay, I have the licensed programs that I have are on my main system, but other stuff like LibreOffice and Audacity and all these other open source programs that I make regular use of, they're on all my systems. And I would use more licensed programs and actually think about getting a new copy of Microsoft Office for the first time in over a decade. The last version I had was Office 2000, which I still have and still use for a few things here and there, but I haven't even thought about upgrading because I'd rather use LibreOffice and deal with some incompatibilities and have to have licensing crap going on. So that is one big reason why I like Steam. Steam gets it. Steam gets that even non-techies these days might have multiple computers or want to access their programs from multiple computers without being like a software pirate that does casual piracy by handing out CDs to their buddies. No, this account-based software access is probably the best idea ever implemented in terms of allowing people more freedom to do stuff with their programs that doesn't involve copying them all over the place. Or even installs, for that matter. I mean, let's face it, folks, optical drives have fallen far behind in terms of speed when installing gigs and gigs of data these days. I remember back when I first, there's a compilation out there called Unreal Anthology that's got Unreal, Unreal 2, Unreal Tournament. I think everything up to Unreal Tournament 2004. I picked it up on sale several years ago, but I remember on one of my older computers when I first installed, with mechanical hard drives, by the way, when I first installed Unreal Anthology, I sat there looking at this alien from the Unreal series, I think it was one of the Scourge or something, with the install music just playing over and over and over again. Maybe you want to turn off my speakers because I got sick of it, that the install just took that long, you know. Yeah, optical drives have traditionally been very slow in terms of transferring data, so even install procedures these days for large games can get a little on the clunky side. And Steam, yeah, sure, Steam downloads can take a long time too, but I mean, being able to, say, use a flash drive or a plug-in drive to transfer your Steam apps folder from one computer to another and completely circumvent having to re-download everything, that is awesome. And that is definitely a new way of doing things that programs like Steam make possible because, hey, The control on how many copies you install and stuff like that is limited by your account, not by where you install it. And that, I think, is a huge leap forward in this day and age where just about everybody these days is going to have like multiple computers. So it matters more who's using the program than which of the computers they have that they currently have it installed on. Now, the recently confirmed Steam box, if Steam can pull this off, or why do I keep saying Steam? I should say Valve. If they can pull this off and make it like a computerish device and make it a full-blown computer and integrate the PC and Steam box side of things perfectly together, maybe via a Windows emulator or via some kind of program that lets Steam run on this box, even if it runs Linux or something like that, and run all these other games. If Steam can pull this off, then they'll just cement this whole model of account-based software stuff even more. It would be great for me to, buy a version of like an Assassin's Creed game on Steam once. And to go from my computer to my living room means just moving the files over instead of having to go out and get a console version on top of the PC version and have to worry about, oh, my save games on this version of the game are like this, my save games on that or that, and things like that. And yeah, I remember those headaches. If you have multiple versions of multi-platform games and you can't move your save games over. Actually, Final Fantasy VIII was a big one because I have the PS1 version of that and I have the PC version, the rare PC version. I've experimented with some of the tweaks that are out there for the old PC Final Fantasy games that like make them in HD and stuff like that, but probably the number one problem I'm having is software incompatibilities and other glitches introduced by the PC tweaks on the PC side versus how the game was originally presented to people on the PS1. And so even though the PS1 version of the game, if I play it through my PS2 Slim, looks really crappy and grainy compared to, I can make FF8 HD on the PC side with the tweaks that are out for it these days and sound way better than the original PlayStation version. I'm always torn between, do I want the more faithful experience to what gamers had back in 1999 or whenever the game came out, or do I want this tweaky thing? It's almost like Morrowind. Do you want to play the original game to know what all the hoopla was about, or do you want to mod the heck out of it to where it doesn't even look like Morrowind anymore with what's available these days? Yeah, it's good. A Steam box can definitely solve that old nagging problem. Okay, you are this person, these are your games, whatever device you play them on, just sign in, download them, just pick up right where you left off, everything will be cloud synced. That is an awesome idea. And I really think that this business model and this way of delivering software, if Valve, I keep saying Steam, darn it, if Valve can work out the problems with third-party DRM still being present in Steam versions of programs, even though Steam is a form of DRM in and of itself with the account-based restrictions on who can install software and things like that, even if they can ever work these issues out, then Steam with applications will be at least as good as Steam for games. And it only gets better and better and better for Valve as Steam continues to be popular. Plus, I like the fact that in this day and age where all these industries with not a lot of competition in them seem to forget that the economy's terrible and nobody has any money, yet we get all these $60 console games and stuff like that. It's great to see that Steam often has never-ending sales where you can just wait until the next sale to get a game 50% off, 75% off, etc., and build up a nice library of games on the cheap that way without even having to go to a store and dig around for used copies of games. That's especially good considering the gaming industry's war on used games that they've practically started up with some of the things that have been announced for future consoles and some of the issues with on-disc DLC, or should I say ULC as it's referred to, which stands for unlockable content. So they don't even, at least they're being honest and saying, hey, you don't download it, you just pay us extra after you bought the game to get it off your own game disc. So, yeah, shenanigans. I must say, though, we got to give Steam credit. Several years ago, people were saying that PC gaming was dead. And thanks to alternative distribution systems like Steam that have just worked out as people have grown to see what the benefits of them are, PC gaming has come roaring back. I got a PS3 last summer, and it's been collecting dust. I've got Gran Turismo 5 and one of the Ratchet & Clank games for it. and I downloaded Beyond Good and Evil HD. But other than those types of games, most multi-plat games, if I can get them to run good on my PC, I'd rather play them through Steam than actually get the console version. Which makes me wonder what I'm going to use this PS3 for, or whether I should ever even bother with a Wii U for anything other than Mario games. But yeah, good job, Steam. I mean, here I was. And nowadays, of course, you can run, you can build a PC with an HDMI out. You can get a video card that does HDMI, send it to your television, plug in a controller like a Logitech or something like that. There's USB controllers for PCs too, and I think some people actually use Xbox 360 controllers on PC to play games and things like that. But I know Skyrim has a checkbox on the PC version for an Xbox controller. So you can get all the gaming you want out of a gaming PC, and now thanks to Steam, you've got all this other fun stuff that traditionally was only found on the consoles through these online systems, DLC online stores, and things along those lines. But yeah, PC gaming has come roaring back. It's at the point now where if my main system can handle a multi-plat release, even something as old as Psychonauts on PS2, which is on Steam, I seriously think that I should just go with the Steam version instead of messing around with a disc. As much as I will always have a slight preference for disc software because to save on downloads and things like that if I have to reinstall it, it's almost to the point now where the sheer convenience of Steam, once I start getting more games that aren't as heavy on the system requirements as something like Skyrim, I probably will start doing more things through Steam, so I can, if I go somewhere, I can just bring my netbook or my crap top with games on it through Steam and do things that way. There's actually a program on Steam that I'm going to check out later on, RPG Maker VX Ace. That it's the latest iteration of the RPG Maker series of programs developed by Enterbrain for making classic old school style RPGs. There's a free version, a free trial, and then there's the full version for like $70, but I like that they're on Steam because I tried using RPG Maker XP several years ago when they released a PC version on download.com, and the number one thing that has killed my use of that program is DRM. It's protected by Protexis, and I had to keep emailing Protexis support and waiting a day telling them, yeah, my hard drive crashed, or I built another computer and I'm out of installs. Can you unlock one more install for me? Meanwhile, as multiple YouTube videos have demonstrated, someone with a software cracker can get into the program in under a minute, while I had to wait a day for Protexis software to respond. So that's probably my worst example of DRM crippleware that I've experienced as of yet. Fortunately, I haven't had too many problems with Securom, or I don't think Star Force ever made it on my system. I didn't play Ubisoft games from around that time period, but I may get the console versions of those games if they're known for having Star Force on them. But, yeah, it's great, though, that something like Steam is out, so I don't have to worry about that crap anymore. And RPG Maker VX Ace is available through Steam, which means if this works the way I think it's going to, I can install the program and tie it to my Steam account and hopefully not have to deal with that kind of DRM again. But I'll have to do a video on that later on to see how this goes and see if Steam is really going to open the door for these kinds of sales from companies that, of course, don't want their program being copied all over the place by making it based on an account instead of based on a computer. So folks who own multiple machines, can have the software installed, but the access is restricted based on where they're signed in. You can't be signed in on more than X amount of devices, etc., etc., etc. I'm really saying the same things over and over again, aren't I? Okay, I'll shut up. Bottom line, I was nervous about Steam initially. I didn't like digital distribution. I thought it was a joke, a game, a gimmick, something that would go away after X amount of time when people got over it. But no, actually Steam has done quite well for itself, or Valve has done quite well for themselves with Steam. And if I can ever stop using the terms Valve and Steam interchangeably, maybe I can actually talk about this and make a little more sense than this blue rambling, yammering stuff that I've been doing. But let's just say, wow, talk about something that deserves a Most Improved award. All I can say is I hope things get better for Valve. I hope Steam takes off like a rocket instead of locomotive. Steam, it runs on Steam. Yet another movie reference. but it'll be good it'll be good too, because if this business model works as well as I think it could, we could see some really, really big changes in how games are sold, in how games are distributed, in what people play games on, and even in the world of software in general. This whole account-based thing, I think, is a breath of fresh air that the software world has needed for a really long time, especially as people have bought up more and more and more devices, and it's very easy to have a program these days installed on all kinds of machines that are owned by a single person who just happens to rotate between a couple of different computers in their daily computing life. So, I will very much be keeping an eye on how Steam develops over the next couple of years. And how successful Valve is with Steam and where Steam expands into. And this Steam box, this console, this thing that people are going to be able to put in their living room to run Steam stuff on. Very much looking forward to that. All I can say is go Steam, go Valve, rock the world, and show people just what technology can do nowadays. I need to stop saying the same stuff over and over again here, so I will. Thank you for listening, everybody. Until next time, I still got to do that economy show. Now that I think of it, I know I said earlier I'll probably try to get it in before the end of the year. I don't know if I'll try to get it done, but otherwise, definitely January for the 1-year anniversary of the layoffs that started this mess for me. I definitely want to do at least one podcast about the economy. I don't know when I'll get to it with all the stuff I've got going on right now, but if I don't get back on the mic before the end of 2012, everybody have a safe and happy holiday season, or as I like to call it, the holiday humbug season, because I'm such a big Scrooge fan. This has been the MultimediaJay Show. I'm MultimediaJay. Thanks for listening, folks, and thanks for stopping by. And because it's that time of year, let's get a bit like Out of Continues and end this podcast with some outro music, specifically an Overclocked remix that is one of my favorites of all time. I'll be sure to put the YouTube video of this song on the companion blog entry that'll go along with this show. This is Lufia 2 Christmas in the Village Silver Bells Overclocked remix, remixed by Dale North, www.ocremix.org. Happy holidays, everybody. This is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.